All right, hello. Welcome to Hunting for Silver Linings for this Wednesday, November 25, 2020. Hosted today by myself, Corey Hart. I'm in Startup Grind, Grand Rapids. We're in the Great Lakes region of the US. And I have a very special guest. We have Shourav Islam from Startup Grind, Dhaka, and Bangladesh. Really excited to have him educate us a little bit on what's going on with the ecosystem over there. We are overall brought to you by Startup Grind, the world's largest startup community with 600 plus chapters in over 125 countries. We operate with three values: make friends, not contacts, help others before you help yourself, and give before you take. Now, we do this program because we realize that the pandemic has been and will continue to be the great global leveler, at the same time revealing enormous challenges like gender, racial, and class equity, and also encouraging a groundswell of collaboration across the planet that we've never seen before, that gives those who've never before had access to capital or ideas the freedom to do so and pursue their entrepreneurship and dreams. And as entrepreneurs, we need to do our very best for our teams, businesses, and families. And the only way we can do so is to be informed, rational, analytical, and rigorous in our thinking. We also need to learn to control our biases as they emerge in various circumstances. And we don't have a crystal ball, but if we pay attention, we might be able to see around the bend and spot the silver linings that are around every cloud. So you can always catch these events on our YouTube channel at startupgrind.com. And then we're also listed our events at startupgrind.com/grand-rapids. So with all of that said, Shourav, thank you so much for joining me today. Really, really grateful to have you.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you so much for inviting me, first of all. And I would like to welcome all the guests today. Well, I'm based in Bangladesh, so it's 9:17 p.m. So it's the night for us. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And definitely during the pandemic, things are a little difficult for us too in Bangladesh. But at least we've been able to cope up with the difficult times. And as a nation, we are now operating. So we are not in a lockdown. So businesses are as usual. Mm-hmm. And at the very beginning of the pandemic, the fear that we all had, I believe as a nation, Bangladesh, we have been able to overcome. And we have been quite seriously fighting this COVID-19 because I'm sure you all may already know about Bangladesh. Bangladesh is my country, first of all, and this is located in Southeast Asia. And Bangladesh's economy is one of the fastest growing economy in the whole Asia at the moment, mm-hmm. Due to the great leadership we have. I believe that is one of the main reasons as a nation we have been able to quite well manage the COVID situation. And when I say as a nation, I mean all the segments, starting from the bottom of the pyramid to the highest. And that's why, Corey, to be very honest, I'm here. I'm surviving right at the moment. And I am also a COVID survivor, by the way. I was hospitalized even 10 days back as a COVID patient. So here I am tonight. So by the grace of the God, I have been able to fight COVID. It was a pretty scary moment, but nothing to be afraid of. COVID is now, at least for Bangladesh, I can say that because as people of Bangladesh, we've been quite hardworking. We've been not only for exercise, but also for day-to-day work. We've been doing a lot of activities. And I'm sure you all may already know, if you know about Bangladesh, is one of the country aside India, where we have a lot of lands, where we do a lot of farming. We have a lot of farmers. So majority of the people in Bangladesh are actually active into farming. Mm-hmm. And that's why they have been able to build their own strong immune system, which have been a very great tool for us to fight against COVID at the moment. And even in the urban areas, so we've been quite well tackling the COVID situation. But the damage it has actually already caused in the earlier stages of COVID, which we are actually overcoming now. And the reason I had to mention the great leadership again and again, because I believe as an overall system, it has actually helped us a lot to cope up with the situation, mm-hmm. Especially into the startup ecosystem. Because I would be very proudly sharing this with all the participants tonight here, that Bangladesh has this great initiative of Digital Bangladesh, which means digitizing Bangladesh, where the government actually taken the initiative to mostly motivate and engage the majority of the youth. And Bangladesh has 40% plus youth at the moment as a whole nation. So it's a quite large number of youth actually out of the whole population, so which are quite well engaged into the startup ecosystem.
Mhm.
And that is one of the main reasons that we've been quite worried in the initial stage of COVID, that what would happen to the small medium enterprises, startups who have been actually struggling already in terms of raising funds, capitals, and who've been probably operating in a quite break-even. What would happen to them? But I would very happily mention and share this with the participants tonight, that they all have been able to get support, financial support from the government, government banks, private banks, financial institutes, and we've been able to manage quite well. And one of the interesting factor that happened to us in Bangladesh is now we have a lot of farming startups have started during the pandemic. Since the lockdown actually had given us a lot of new ideas, and again, I'm very proud of the entire youth of Bangladesh, also the millennials of Bangladesh like us, who actually didn't stop during the pandemic, but started keep thinking more how to unlock the lock situation.
Mhm.
And many good startups actually started working during the pandemic, and a few of the well-established or medium-sized startups who've been dealing with the food industry mainly started growing quite faster during the pandemic, because during the lockdown situation they actually took the daring challenges of serving people, especially people when they started during the March, April, May, when people were locked down into the houses. A few of these brave people came out of their houses with proper precaution and actually served. And there, some of the startups actually been quite helpful during the pandemic in terms of helping people. So as a nation, Corey, from the startup point of view, we had challenges. We still have challenges, but together we are actually overcoming the minor issues. But overall, as a nation, we are doing quite well in terms of supporting the startups, because the best part is that startups for Bangladesh is not a private discussion, it's now a public discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So which means the public bodies like ministries and all the other government bodies are actually actively involved into supporting startups ecosystem.
Sure.
So that is one of the main motivation where when you talk about startups, it's not about urban startups only. Now we have got entire, Bangladesh has got 64 districts. The entire 64 districts, urban, semi-rural and rural youths are engaged into creating startups, because the best part is internet. So when me and Corey were initially connected, Corey was complaining that my internet is quite slow because I was connected to the Wi-Fi. And Corey, trust me when I was telling you that I'm going to switch my internet. So I switched from the home Wi-Fi to mobile internet.
Sure.
Because mobile internet is right now, I'm speaking to you over mobile internet, which is faster and better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the main reasons digital Bangladesh is growing very fast, because now we have got almost 76% plus people carrying smartphones. Sure. With internet. And that is one of the reasons that mobile internet is very good in Bangladesh. And I'm sure you can understand the internet that I'm using right now with you over mobile. It's the same speed as someone in a rural area, they're also having the same speed. So that is actually leveraging and getting a lot of positive support for the online startups, online businesses. So people...
You've done that's a nice thorough introduction, and you've touched on a lot of different things that I'd like to ask some questions about. And before we get back into the ecosystem, the region, sectors, and individual companies, I know that our fellow chapter directors and other investment groups, et cetera, are also interested in learning about our chapter directors and our history. So if you could maybe explain a little bit about your personal background, and I know you have a nice varied background and you have one of these farm startups yourself. And then you also you help entrepreneurs, and you help startups yourself with programming, and have. So I'd like to hear also like how you found Startup Grind. So a little background and how you ended up with Startup Grind.
Thank you, Corey. The way I got connected to Startup Grind is actually through Google. And my story is basically I was in Australia. I did my studies from Australia, Macquarie University. And after my graduation, I actually got into Rocket Internet. So I was working with Rocket Internet, the iconic.com.au in Australia. So from there, I got shifted, transferred from Sydney to Singapore. So when I was in Singapore, I got because I was working mostly with the customer experience team. So I had to work with Facebook, Google for many new innovative ideas and thoughts, because back in 2012, in that entire industry into this area was quite new, even in Singapore. Mm-hmm. So I was mostly dealing with Google and Facebook quite a lot. And from there, actually, one of my friend actually over the coffee offered me, since I'm from Bangladesh, why don't I actually take one of the business opportunity and start Google AdSense for Bangladesh market, because Bangla as a language was not being recognized into Google. So as a result, AdSense wasn't working in Bangladesh officially, neither AdWords. So local advertisers couldn't put ad into Bengali, because Bangla, I'm sure you understand that every ad has to have the local context. So we say contextual content marketing, that was quite missing, both from the publisher side, also from the advertiser side. So, and I actually got into that thoughts I took it quite seriously. And then I start exploring to Bangladesh market, how best we can actually introduce this product of Google to Bangladesh. And back then we had Kazi Monirul Kabir as the Google country representative in Bangladesh. So, and since Google headquarters was in Singapore, so it was quite easy for me to get connected with him. And then from there, we started back in 2013 as the first Google AdSense certified agency for Bangladesh. And there was the first startup I formed named Unifox Digital. And to form that company, I was partnered with my cousin brother, because he was already an entrepreneur in Bangladesh 5 years ahead of me. So I thought of best connecting with him, and he helped me getting my office set up. So initially, Corey, having my cousin brother with me, his name is Sami, is also my partner. So I didn't have to worry for having an office, because back then, setting a startup, hiring people, getting an office, it needs capital. So I was quite blessed to start the Unifox Digital as a Google partner, because I had the startup set up due to my cousin's help. So that was his part of investment came in. And then we started sharing the profit from the initial clients we had. And from there, we started Google AdSense as the first company with Unifox Digital. And then later we explored, since AdSense was blocked when it's open, then we started working with AdWords. So then we actually also opened Google AdWords as, again, the first agency to start introducing Google AdWords for Bangladesh market. And eventually these two businesses made us quite popular into Bangladesh, because we're the only company back then working for Google AdSense and Google AdWords, because it was very, very new. And then we had two other companies slowly coming and joining us doing the same activity, like GNR. So basically, while I was working with Google a lot into AdWords, AdSense, traveling a lot in Singapore, there I actually got to get this opportunity from one of the Google colleagues to introduce Google, Startup Grind, powered by Google entrepreneurs, to Bangladesh. And then basically with the local chapters, even before I took up Startup Grind into Bangladesh, one of the guy named Arif, he was actually already working with Startup Grind. But what happens, Corey, even right now, to run the entire Startup Grind events and everything, it was back then quite difficult to raise sponsorships to run the events. And the entire concept was also quite new in Bangladesh, of having introducing a coffee event and then invite all startups, investors and startups, because startup concept was quite new for Bangladesh back in 2013. So they were struggling to actually support Startup Grind events into Bangladesh. So then eventually I came and took it up. And then since I had my setup, office setup, spaces and everything, so we started using our own spaces and convert them into almost like a hub for startups to start coming in and let them, because we also want them to use the spaces and see how a startup works. Because for us, Corey, even when we started Uniforms Digital, we didn't have an office where we kept the open office culture, like same as Google, because that's what I've seen into Google Office, Facebook Office, and same culture I wanted to introduce into my office in Bangladesh. Same decorations, same environment. And that was quite motivating for the young people to come and see. And then slowly we started building up Startup Grind's attraction into Bangladesh by having every month an event. But we barely could have any event which was not sponsored, because we always had to have sponsors to support us to run the events. And sometimes we made our own sponsorship to run Startup Grind. But the reason we actually I got myself involved with Startup Grind because, Corey, I'm a big fan of globalization. I'm always quite keen to connect to as many people as possible from around the world, besides my own people. So, and I believe Startup Grind, at least to me, gave me a lot of connections, networks, friends around the world, through which I could have been able to share a lot of ideas, even some of the startups that I've been already involved with. And for us in Bangladesh, Corey, concepts like Startup Grind are similar. Other events that are already happening, startup weekends, they're already taking places in Bangladesh in different ways. But at the end of the day, if you look into the economy of Bangladesh, a number of youth involved into the whole ecosystem, it's not always motivating words motivate them, Corey. At the end of the day, the results matters, because you can have a nice startup, but if it is not giving you fruits, it becomes difficult for the economy. From the economic perspective, it will become difficult for you to continue for a longer time. And from that perspective, when we hold Startup Grind events and we have youths or millennials coming in, the questions are getting difficult for us to address. So that is basically my, I would say, as a small introduction and how I get into Startup Grind.
Sure. Can you give us just a little background on the Farmers Market Asia?
Sure. That's basically one of the startup that I founded up recently. Not recently, it was one of the startups we founded in 2016 September. The reason because while we've been working with Google for AdSense, AdWords, later we also worked with Facebook to introduce Facebook Instant Article and Facebook advertising as well. In 2016, we actually got this offer to look into the matter of e-traceability from the organization named Bangladesh Shrimp and Fish Foundation, because they've been struggling for almost 12 years, past 12 years from 2016, to have this set up in Bangladesh as a part of compliance, because Europe, USA, Australia, Canada, they will actually will not support the food export any longer if we do not have e-traceability into our value chain.
Right.
So that is one of the reasons we've been involved into look into the matter for e-traceability in 2016, and from there eventually we formed our first venture, Farmers Market Asia, which is related to agriculture. And one of the breakthrough in Farmers Market Asia was to introduce a supply chain, end-to-end supply chain, which is traceable. So which means right now through Farmers Market Asia, the application that we have introduced for Bangladesh is we can now track and trace for shrimp industry starting from a PL, which is a post-larva, until it is being sold into a supermarket in USA. But unfortunately, the reason we cannot place our products into the shelf of US superstore, because we are still failing to meet the compliances, because you see, when I have an application, the application actually have to be used by the farmers. So now, while you're developing an UI or a UX, keeping the farmers in mind, it's quite difficult, because it's not about English, it's not about Bengali either, because majority of the farmers are not actually being able to read and write. So we really have to look into this entire model of designing a system which can be very easily used by the farmers, which is the bottom of the pyramid, and then where the inputs are very basics, that when did they first purchase the PL, what was the price of the PL, so time, date, price. That's where it starts from, because this Farmers Market Asia is not only providing an application to the farmers, but also financial support to the farmers.
Sure.
So as I already mentioned in the earlier of my discussion, that majority of the people in Bangladesh are involved in farming. And I feel very, very good, Corey, to be very honest, when we deal with the farmers and when you actually help them, not only by providing an application, but also with financial support to the very, almost without an interest. We have developed the concept to support the farmers with zero interest. Because under the contract farming model, we actually help them with the finances, with the seed. In return, we only want them to input the data. And we also buy back from them, from the products, the producers, the fresh producers. So what happens as a result, that the farmers do not need to rely on the middleman, because middleman actually makes the trouble in terms of adding the additives and other negative negative things. So that's why under our model, farmers are not needing to go to the middleman. And current status quo is basically, we have a lot of investors, by the grace of God, who are who are housewives, who are working people, and now just sending us emails saying, hey, I want to invest into this particular farm located into this area. Oh, cool. Because all the farms we have are registered on Google Maps. And here comes Google, because all my learning from Google, I put in here. So Google mapping is one of the concepts that I when I was working with closely with Google, so I deployed the entire idea here. So Google mapping became one of the key product in this entire concept, where all the farms are Google mapped, pinned, and so my investors sitting into anywhere in the world can actually see my exact farm. And in the details of the Google pinning, we put the video and the picture of the farmer, and we explain the whole details, the farm details, the size of the pond or the farm, and what they're producing, what is the output and the price of the area. So it gives a trust to the farm investors. And so they just call us and say, hey, we're sending you money. I want to invest X amount of money into this particular farm. So this is quite interesting. We're quite happy with this venture at the moment.
It sounds like there's a lot of moving parts to that. To talk a little bit about the ecosystem there, and definitely in the region. So you mentioned that agriculture is very big. You mentioned that there's not a problem with infrastructure as far as digital, and you also talked about earlier about how you are one of the top 10 fastest growing markets in the world. What are
in Asia?
Yeah. So what are the other popular sectors if someone's going to be interested in diversifying and looking for the regions to get involved in?
Besides, what are the other sectors?
Yeah, like, is it healthcare, education, finance? Like, are there other opportunities that are growing?
Farming is definitely number one for us as a priority, and well, education is a second, because our as a nation, what we say, we have got 5 basic needs, which basically is say food, clothing, health, education, and definitely healthy food. When I want healthy food, so healthcare, education education comes in second, healthcare comes in the tertiary level. So after agriculture or food, one is actually food safety, one is food security. So Bangladesh is now actually compliant in food security. So now we have the full capacity to produce the basic need for the entire population. That's one of the great things for us. So which is green tick, which means now we are good in food security. And now if we move into the second sector, which is actually education, and third is healthcare. But if you see now the current condition after pandemic, healthcare, definitely, you understand, not only in Bangladesh, all around the world, healthcare has been redesigned, rethought, remodeled, keeping pandemic and the future of healthcare in mind. Same in Bangladesh. So we had difficulties with healthcare, but during the pandemic, all the healthcare startups actually been able to quite well merged with the existing healthcare system, which may have had flaws, say for example, because for a country like ours, our healthcare system may have some difficulties, but the best part is that as I said, maybe there are very few healthcare startups we had in Bangladesh for past few years, but rather we have new startups coming into healthcare now. What we have seen in last few, say, 6, 7, 8 months during the pandemic, we have seen that, as I already mentioned, that government took up pretty well, connected with existing startups, automations in healthcare, rather focusing on new ones. So that is the best part, which actually speed up the things. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel. Rather, the existing healthcare startups we had, they came up and started helping the government. Because I'm sure Corey understand the government has the best connections to the whole country in terms of network. So healthcare is one of the most prospective sector, I would say, and in Bangladesh, our own people, our own students, our own developers are actually pretty good. Because if you look into the outsourcing industry of Bangladesh, the number of developers we actually now have work from home concept. Because earlier it was a quite difficult situation for work from home concept, because female or the girls who actually been into coding or into designing or any other freelancing works, it was quite difficult for them to work going outside the comfort zone. Mm-hmm. But now, see, pandemic had added some little value for them. They by default can sit at home and contributing even larger into the business. So for healthcare, for education, currently for a country like Bangladesh, we do have new startups who are greatly involved and directly involved now with the government and helping them in terms of fixing up the gaps that we already had. Because as a nation, the best part is that for every ministry, if it's a sector or industry, whether healthcare, education, whether food, or for say garments is one of the largest contributor of the Bangladesh economy, which is RMG, ready-made garments, Bangladesh. So all these sectors actually have quite well coordinated during the pandemic. Rather they lost control, I would say they actually got a quite strong hold onto each of the sector, because as I said, all the layers of the ecosystem actually got quite well bonded during the pandemic.
Sure.
It was earlier difficult, but during the pandemic, during the lockdown, each segment realizes the importance of each other. So eventually the top-down strategy or bottom-up strategy, well, both coordinated well in the middle, and now having a quite good strong bonding, and the ecosystem, which we earlier had questions whether the ecosystem is well connected or not. Now we can see that all the layers of the digital Bangladesh or the startup ecosystem is working smooth. There are still some questions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bring up a good point, and we see this all over the globe that the pandemic over the last 8 months, it didn't necessarily change very much as much as it accelerated things. So like existing trends, maybe year over year might have been 1%. Now those same trends just have been accelerated by like 10 times in such a short period of time. So that's like the sharing of ideas, globalization as far as like banking and central banks, and coordination on healthcare and innovation and all that fun stuff. So it's going to be really interesting to see as we emerge in the coming years how much faster and farther and further we'll go. Having now established and tested all of the systems to their breaking point, right? So I'm curious to learn. So you mentioned that you have a very large population of youth, and you also mentioned that there is a very strong distributed network of support from the government in all of the districts. So if I'm a young person and I have an idea for a business, no matter where I am, is there a fairly uniform and understood process as far as accessing resources, whether government or like local incubators or working with local professionals or mentors?
Yes, Corey. Surprisingly, the best part for Bangladesh is now that no matter what you are, even if you're in US having a good idea and you think that your investment would be quite well if you think for Bangladesh to invest in, say for example, uh, the first thing that you look into is the BOI, the Board of Investment, and from there, as I was saying, the interesting part is that since all the ministries actually been directly directed by the Prime Minister to look into the startups with the highest priority.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, since youth is one of the important uh, uh, factor for Bangladesh at the moment. So, and that's why if you come to Korea now to Bangladesh to invest, you would understand by yourself how smooth the journey would be for you. Starting from, even if you step down to a BOI, Board of Investment, they would guide you for the next step, understanding what business model is you're looking at, and they would help you if required to reshape. And not only you coming from, if it is a foreign investment, and the best part is that the policy that we are designing now to support and facilitate the local ventures too. So that actually when and foreign direct investments is how it's going to impact into Bangladesh's overall economy, plus how the startups going to be connected to them. So which means you to me. So when Corey comes to Bangladesh and Corey is investing into Bangladesh, Shourav is also getting benefited. So that the bridging concept of for the startups is actually working well, and that is one of the prime reason I think if you look into the investments, foreign direct investment for Bangladesh now it's increasing at the moment, and many other countries not only for startups but the large investments too. They're all looking into invest back into Bangladesh. Now it's no more because we have a cheap labor. That concept is gone. Now because we have a skilled labor. So that is the best part of Bangladesh in 2020.
So now, I'm in Bangladesh. I have a good idea. I'm getting some traction. I'm getting customers. I have some revenue. Now it's time to scale and grow. Is it fairly easy to find capital locally, or do I go outside and get it from outside the region?
Well, that's locally, we are capable of investing into local ventures, and that's what we're doing right now. So even all the loan interest structure had been changed in the very recent times. Starting from last week, we had, not last week, this week, Bangladesh government declared to support small, micro, medium enterprises to support their working capital. The loan interest came down to 6% from 9% this week, so that it becomes even easier for micro, small, medium entrepreneurs to access to the fund from the government banks with a lower interest rate to ensure their working capital. And honestly, Corey, as you say that you have a small startup, you are having attraction, which means you do have a flow of money. You have a small customer base, but you only need a working capital support to support your other operational activities. And which means now you're taking a loan from financial support, or a loan from the government banks. The probability of defaulter is lower for startups. This concept was quite not been able to establish in Bangladesh for quite a long time. I would say from 2013 when we started until 2019, in this whole long year, it was quite difficult. We faced a lot of difficulties, Corey. We never had to have the chance to go to the bank to support us for financial support. A startup, what is a startup?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You are a small company. So we had very, very interesting and weird comments from big organizations who are actually following our instructions now.
Right.
So that's the best part. So when Corey, sat into a meeting with, I won't name the name because it's a global company. When I sat in a meeting with that global company back in 2015, and I introduced myself as the CEO of my company, the brand manager, general manager was like, "You are a CEO of your company, just like, come on, buddy, you're kidding me, man." They had a perception of the CEO that they see. And now a small guy sitting in front of me saying he's the CEO and the founder of a company. Quite weird. So, so that concept is in 2019, 2020, it's completely changed for it. So now we're very happy. Now we are no more embarrassed into facing big meetings. in banks, in anywhere. And in fact, that top of mind awareness for government officials, it took a long time to accept the concept of startup. And here's the point: the credit goes to the current government that they have been continuously putting efforts into this particular area to support the youth, where all the entire government ecosystem understand what is startup ecosystem.
Sure.
So there we have got now lesser gap. So that's the best part right now, where Bangladesh startup ecosystem is enjoying.
Right.
So if I'm a small startup in Bangladesh, having traction, having access to fund is no more a challenge. But there's still some policy issues that, again, as I said, since there's a lesser gap, government is actively working to sort this out too, so that we have a better solution.
It also sounds like you have a very strong support network, so that should people come up against some challenges or barriers, there's people to ask for help or what the next steps might be. And as we know, a good idea and traction is usually no problem finding funding. So you mentioned that that there's a good amount of diversity and density and talent. So as far as the education side, so if I'm interested in entrepreneurism, or if I'm going to university, am I getting the skills I need to emerge from university and become an entrepreneur, or is there a skills gap? Because the ecosystem is still quite young, right? Has the education sector grown and met the need?
No. That's a very good question to us, but sadly, it is growing. So see, leadership matters. So right now, the educational sector, where we have got quite young, we have the youngest minister, state minister for education ministry now, for the last 2 years. So the reason for this is actually because they would probably, this is how the government thinks of connecting people to people. So it's not about politics, it's not about other things, it's about leaders to people, which people to people connection. So now what we have seen in the last 2 years, the massive innovation into education sector. It's not about pandemic of taking schools online. So it's about, for the last 2 years, we've been seeing a lot of new innovation coming into the education sector, not only by digitizing the education sector, but also the question that you ask when you're an entrepreneur, is there a skill gap? The contents are the content that has been produced into different sectors for education. It had some gap. Now it has been widely looking to reduce the gaps, because when you talk about soft skill, when one is hard skill, one is soft skill. So when you talk about soft skill now has been taken very seriously, which means when digitization is actually helping there too, because which means someone in very rural area, and it's a female, is sometimes facing a lot of difficulties in a country like Bangladesh to come to Dhaka, which is the capital, to get a skill learning. So it's no more there anymore, Corey. So you can be wherever you are, and the decentralization of digital divide, it's been done. It's properly taken care of in Bangladesh. So, and it's not only for pandemic, it's been happening for quite a long time in Bangladesh. And again, as I said, internet. So now through the mobile internet, the education, the soft skill is actually been rapidly growing in Bangladesh. So people are quite into, but yes, there is a gap in the content.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, you have to design the content to train me.
Yeah.
And that's where we are still, I think we would need a little support.
I think we here in the U.S. Have that problem. We have always had that problem. We may have the infrastructure, but and then of course it's so expensive here. So we have a lot of people spending a lot of money. They emerge and then they owe a lot of cash and don't have the skills. So it's tough. Now, with such a young population, and you said that there's a bit of a skills gap with the education. You mentioned that entrepreneurship is now fairly popular. So what is that for the collective mindset, right? Because it's still a young ecosystem. So if I'm an entrepreneur, if I have an idea, I have a business, I tell my friends, Am I going to get a lot of people saying, oh, why would you do that? You should get a job in government, or you should get a job at a firm. Or I have families saying that will never work. Like, no, like, or is it like, oh, that's great. Please, yes, that's do it, do it. Like, what's the mindset now? Where should it, where does it need to go?
Well, the mindset is changing. Is your question is very, very contextual for us, because that was the trend when even my parents never wanted me to come back to Bangladesh because I was settled in Australia with rocket internet.
Right.
What do you think, bro? I had 6-digit salary. Why would I leave that and come back to Bangladesh?
Mm-hmm.
But see, we had to struggle to convince our own parents to understand and make them understand what is. To be very honest, Corey, and for the audience today, I would like to share this with you all, because from 2012 till 2015, I struggled myself to convince my parents that what I do.
What is it even that you do? Yeah.
They didn't even understand what I do. My father had struggled to explain others what your son's doing. And that is a very big question in a country like Bangladesh, India, or Pakistan, or Sri Lanka, because the economy, the culture that we have been going through is actually, this question is a very big question, what your son is doing. Or now what is your doctor doing?
Right.
Because the moment you finish your studies, you're supposed to get into a job. You getting into a business is actually a lavish thought. So, and when this is the point that I was actually quite bragging about Bangladesh because of, and also the government, because the mindset or the top of mind awareness of the people, when I say people, this is the TG I meant actually, Corey, the parents. So the parents actually previously did not open to let their son get into business, because if he cannot, because when in Bangladesh, when you graduate from university, you're about 22, 23. So now if you get into a business at 22, 23, and then you experiment yourself 23, 24, 25, 26, if you cannot get your business have a traction or having a profit, which through which you can actually survive, you can also contribute to your parents, you get married, you have kids. By 28, you have to get married in Bangladesh, by the way. Okay. By 28, 30 is the highest maximum time for a guy in Bangladesh to get married. So these are some cultural issues which matters, puts pressure into the youth or the people who are quite interested into entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. So that was a challenge that we had faced earlier in Bangladesh of promoting entrepreneurship. But that is one of the best part that we're enjoying now. Again, because of the public support, the government support, now entrepreneurship is well established in Bangladesh. So, which means people who are young people who are looking to get into entrepreneurship, they can easily come into that. But again, the question remains: how long you can afford to carry on? Because if you, after graduation, if you cannot get yourself into, if you cannot monetize yourself into monetization too by 25, 26 years, and then you actually, Corey, lost the opportunity to get back to job. That is the most scariest part. So you cannot get your business done, and now you have lost the chance to get into a job. So which way to go? So that is one of the difficult situations we had earlier, but now it's no longer a trouble for Bangladesh.
That's very cool. It's very interesting. And it's been really fun for us to talk with the chapter directors from all over the planet, because the cultures are different everywhere, and that has a lot to do with expectations on from family and your existing network. Right. So we're coming up on the end of the hour here, but I want to ask you, as the chapter director for the Startup Grind there, and as a mentor, I imagine, to a lot of people in your community, what are some of the questions you're being asked now by your community, and the advice that you're giving to the entrepreneurs in your network?
Well, one of the few questions that we usually get to hear people that they come and ask us is actually that I have an idea and I need money. So I have an idea, I want to do this business, where can I get some access to fund? So, and our answers are basically, particularly if you ask me, Corey, my advices for my next generations are always based on my own experience, because I myself cannot yet claim I'm an entrepreneur or I'm a businessman, because uh, business, the basic, the basic of business was, is, and will remain the same, and that is the dollar sign, the money.
Mm-hmm.
So and definitely we have had a lot of changes due to the change in the overall thought process, which means now we have got startups who are thinking about social good. We have every business who are actually now thinking, creating new innovations or ideas that will create an impact, not only into my business, but also into lives of the others. So all the impactful businesses are now coming up. That's one of the good things. Uh, but our advice remains to the young people that yes, whenever you have an idea, make sure that it's not only impacting your own pocket, but also helping others. That's one of the advice that I always share with my people, whoever asks me question. At the same time, Corey, I have to go back to the basics to help the young people by telling them whatever business that you're thinking of, planning of doing, the first thing is that monetization. Tell me the monetization tool. So no, I'll give you in 1 million local currency, say Bangladeshi BDT, Bangladeshi currency, but you have to tell me the time frame that I can monetize this back. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
So which means monetization. So without monetization, how could you define business?
Right.
So, I mean, to us, at least to us, the family background we're coming from, the cultural background we're coming from, the city we have been born and brought up from, we have been always taught in terms of business. Business was, is, and will remain the basics. That is money. Mm-hmm. So you have to tell, or you have to think of the monetization in an ethical way for sure. Because in a country like Bangladesh, we have many options. I mean, options remain sometimes open into getting the negative side or the positive side. So that is one of the important elements when we advise our next generation, that the impact, monetization, and of course it has to be ethically built. Mm-hmm. So that which means the money that you're probably earning, or the innovation that you're thinking, not only have positive impact on the other side, but at the same time, it's ethically built. So there's nothing, no rules breaking. Even if you think the policy that government has deployed at the moment on you think that this policy is wrong. So you have your own freedom of speech of raising your hand and talk about it, but please do not break the rules. So these are the few things that we always try to motivate our young people when they come to us with questions like this.
Cool. It's always very interesting to hear what's on the top of the mind as far as questions for the local entrepreneurs from all over the planet. As chapter directors, we are getting a lot of questions from our community. We're always answering the questions. We're doing our very best to connect people. But a lot of times we don't, because we're so busy doing that, we don't have the opportunity to ask for help ourselves. So what I'd like to ask each one of our chapter directors at the end of our conversation is, what can Startup Grind community, the global community, do for Shourav? What can we do for you? What can we do for your chapter?
Thank you, Corey. That's a very, very, I would say, emotional question, rather. So thank you for asking this question, that what would you do for me? So as a Startup Grind community chapter director, I would say the best support that we would probably need from Startup Grind, that I would always been sharing with other Startup Grind chapter directors, is number one, connectivity. I would like to get connected to all the chapter directors, number one. Number two, sharing our own ideas, which means if I've been now through Startup Grind, if I've got a database of 300 startups who are actually asking the same question that we have discussed earlier, how do we exchange ideas with each other? Mm-hmm. So there has to be a central database for all the chapter directors to put in their thoughts in there. Not only my ideas, the people who are actually trusting us are hoping that if I come to Startup Grind, listen to this investor or entrepreneur, at the end of the day, I have something to tell, or I have something in my mind too, and I want to share that. So I think something like that would be very helpful, Corey, where we actually can have a global, but a central database or central system or a hub where we all actually can throw back our own ideas, at the same time, the ideas of our people. Mm-hmm. Because when I look into my audience's eyes, I sometimes get scared because I know that they have a lot of questions, but they also sometimes think that whether I would be able to answer it or not. So which means the expectations of my audience is actually quite large. So we really need to cater that. And to cater that, the help that you can do, Corey, is globalization. So you connect me with all these startup grind chapter directors, and let us connect to each other with our own databases, our own people, so that we have a larger community. And at the same time, not only connectivity, Corey, as we were just give an example that Corey wants to invest into Bangladesh, we really want to make it happen. So as I was for the last 1 hour, I've been talking to you and bragging a lot about my country, talking a lot about good things about my government. And this time we really want to invite you all to experience it, first-hand experience. So which means not only you come to Bangladesh, Corey, I also want to go to Kenya, say for example. I also want to probably go to South Africa. There are lots of opportunities as well. So globalization at the end of the day, Corey, I see Startup Grind always as a global platform where we can connect each other. But this connectivity also would be helpful if can be monetized.
Sure.
So monetized in terms of opportunity. That would be a great help, Corey.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's something that is slowly emerging, and we've seen the beginnings of it in our community. And I was impressed with how fast we went from in person and in all of our own silos, and now we have so much more collaboration around the globe. But we definitely can use more. So we are at the end of the hour here, so I just wanted to say thank you so much for your the generosity of your time. I've really enjoyed learning about you personally, as well as Bangladesh, because honestly, I other than some uninformed stereotypes, I really didn't know very much. So I'm really grateful for you taking.
Tell me what did you know? Tell me in one line, please. My one question at the end, Corey. Tell me what did you know about Bangladesh in one line, maybe.
What did I know?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I knew I know the region because I have some acquaintances and friends from the area, and unfortunately, like they haven't returned home, and they filled my head with it being a largely rural population, and like you said, like a lot of agriculture. So the how fast the ecosystem has grown, is impressive, and it was surprising.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Also, I'm happy to hear that you're feeling much better after your experience with COVID, and continued health and safety for you and your family.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you so much. Thank you and Maya for inviting me as well.
All right, I'll talk to you soon, and thank you so much. All right, Shourav, have a good rest of your night.
Thank you too. You too. Bye bye. Take care.